Welcome back to Millie Slop, or as today should be called, the Sloppies. The Sloppies are where I share my favorite slops so that you guys can save time and just watch the thing that I like. As the year rounds to a close, I feel like a lot of end of year lists are coming out, and people have a lot of takes about what the best movie was, or what the best video game was, or what the greatest content creator of the year was. And they're all wrong, because my opinion is actually really good too. I don't know if anyone else has this thing, but when I say I love a movie, and then other people are like, hey, actually I hated that movie. It was the worst movie that I saw all year. It hurts my feelings in a fundamental way. There's something about liking something and having other people hate it that is like, it could be my best friends in the entire universe. And I'm like, hey, I really love the movie The Social Network. And they're like, I think that movie's bad. And I'm like, maybe we should pack it up as friends. I watched a lot of stuff this year, and I wanted to do kind of a little roundup where I shared with you guys my best / most favorites. I guess not best. Most favorite is more accurate. Because I don't know if these are the quote unquote best movies. They were just movies I liked a lot, or video games I liked a lot, or books, but I didn't read any. Well, I did read one, and it was Lord of the Flies, which didn't come out this year. But man, was it violent. First category in the Sloppies is my favorite game of the year. Now, as people may not know, but I'm actually a gamer. I play a lot of video games. Before I had a child, I played a lot of video games. And post-child, most of my video games have to be relegated either to the workday or after my son goes to sleep where I'm very tired, and usually still working. I played at least 1 hour of about 37 different games this year, and I didn't necessarily finish all of these games. A lot of them I just tested out until I realized they weren't necessarily for me. But my favorite game that I played all year long was a game called 9 Souls. 9 Souls is a very similar game to Hollow Knight, if you played that. It's a 2D Metroidvania that has a insanely cool sci-fi premise that I don't really want to spoil much of. But basically you start in this tiny village, and then it soon becomes clear that this large conspiracy is going on. In 9 Souls, you are a Solarian, and you have been betrayed by your old teacher, and you're sort of building yourself back up to take down the 9 Souls and restore balance to your race and to your people. This game takes place in an insanely cool environment, and there's all sorts of fascinating, interesting characters and brutal combat. The art design was particularly interesting to me. I was super impressed with the depth of each of the different worlds. Every time you get to a new map area, you sort of encounter totally new enemies and new puzzles and new abilities and things you just didn't really expect. So 9 Souls I played throughout the entirety of me going on tour, and it was really fantastic to have time on the plane or have time on the train to whip out my Steam Deck and play 9 Souls. It's insanely hard too. I definitely have a obsession with difficult games. I mean, Elden Ring was my favorites. I platinumed that game. All the Dark Souls games, except for Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne, Sekiro. Part of the game is you're rebuilding this home that you once had, and there's this kind of castaway boy with the very beginning of the game. I mean, I guess it's a spoiler for the first 10 minutes of the game, but there's this boy, and you save him, and then you end up teaching him about your childhood and your past, and becoming this father figure to him. As you're at different points in the map, you're picking up objects and you're bringing them back and giving them to him, and you're explaining to him about your culture and how you grew up and the history and routines and rituals that you once had. And as a relatively new father, my son's almost 2, I found that part of the game to be really emotional. I think there was something about having a lost little boy who just is so hungry to play and learn that's so exciting. And I think when you tack on a big sci-fi premise, so as the little boy's learning about this interesting world, so are you as the player. So my GOATY was 9 Souls, but I do have a couple honorable recommendations. Balatro, I played a shit ton of. It's poker, but it's a roguelike. This game is probably gonna win most game of the year lists, I think. I played a bunch this morning. I played it all year long. It's a game I can pick up at any time and play more of. I'm probably gonna play more tonight after my son goes to bed. Also, Tactical Breach Wizards, a great kind of puzzle game where you're this crew of wizards. This was kind of an interesting blend between a combat strategy game and a puzzle game. You have these different wizards who become kind of SWAT team-like characters, and there's a whole advanced story, and you breach into rooms and zap people out of windows. those. Another one I could not put down is Animal Well. This game is so unique. I've never really played a game like it. It's handmade by either one person or a couple different people. The art style is really interesting, but it's one of those ones where you get into and you're not given much. My favorite games are often where you're not given much and you're like this little blob and you start to discover things and you encounter weird but strange parts of the world, and you have to figure out not only where you are and what you're doing, but this game has like layer upon layer upon layer of secrets that I did not even discover, and I had to watch videos of people discover them because it was so complicated and I simply didn't have the time. But I put in, I think, like a dozen or so hours into this game and it rocked. Also played Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I mean, it's more Elden Ring. I loved it. I find great joy in the unknown. And some of my favorite games, Animal Well included, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree included, are games where I'm not given much of an instruction manual. I kind of have to just figure it out. And that element of like, there's limitless possibility. This could be anything. And I have to scrape, and slowly I'm peeling away like mud on a painting. And by the end of it, I'm looking at that gorgeous Mona Lisa, baby. So 9 Souls is my game of the year, and those are kind of my goaties as well. But now let's move on to Sloppy, category 2. My favorite movie of the year, or it's hard to say favorite, because this is a movie that when I saw it, I really loved the experience of watching it. And then after I walked into the theater, I was like angry. I didn't like the ending really that much. But then I started to think about it, and I thought about it almost nonstop for like several weeks after I walked out of the theater. It really, really, really stuck with me. And this is a movie called I Saw the TV Glow. And it's an indie darling, like a lot of people really loved it. It centers around these two young characters, Owen and Maddie, who watch this TV show called The Pink Opaque, and they're really drawn into the themes of the show. They're both, I would say, lonely, isolated characters, and then it goes from there. I don't want to spoil too much, but basically it centers around the idea that there is something that is inherently true that no one can see except for you. And because you're the only person that can see it, you either have to believe and dive in, or you have to lie to yourself about it. The movie obviously centers around trans themes and identity and figuring out who you are and gender and the fluidity of that. I found that the idea of loss and grief and confusion at that young age to be like really impactful. There are many moments in the movie where the lead character is like walking around and they just aren't really sure what to do with themselves. And I really identified with that. I found that as a high schooler who went through like an immense amount of grief and confusion, and I just like didn't really know what my place was, and I had all of these feelings of loss and like, the uncanny valley feeling of being a young person and being expected to feel joy, but not really being able to always perform that. That came through to me like 1000%. And maybe that's just because of my own personal experience, but I really related to these characters' struggle in the movie. And the soundtrack to this movie is phenomenal. I've been listening to it like almost nonstop. It's got all of this like fantastic angst and anger that really comes across, and I think the soundtrack is like so good. Also, the visuals of this movie are insane. I kind of recommend this to everybody, but I think go in with a grain of salt. It's a weird movie. It's like definitely a weird movie. It's like narratively like a little bit unsatisfying. It's totally visually ridiculous and insane. At times during the movie, you jump into this fictional show that the characters watch, and the show is so strange and like grotesque, but it's really beautiful. And I just recommend this movie. I think that the reason it's my movie of the year, is because I did not see anything else like it, and I don't think I've seen another movie like this movie. So hot recommend. Go see I Saw the TV Glow. Other hot recommendations, obviously Challengers. It's sexy, it's hot, it's tennis. Everyone's talked about this. And Wicked. I'm so glad musical theater's back. It's been too long, man. We've all had a hard time. But when I watched Wicked, I just couldn't help but get emotional. And I was thinking about being a high schooler and watching Wicked and being like, man, like I feel that like othered feeling, and like, what if I want to be loved and included? And I just, You know, the music's so beautiful and it is so fun. Cynthia Erivo is insanely talented. I thought Ariana Grande did a fantastic job too. It was a movie I just loved. And I honestly have never seen Wicked live. I don't know how the show ends. I've never seen the second half. I thought it ended with Defying Gravity, but then it turns out that's the thing in the musical that happens before intermission. So I'm psyched for the second one, and I think it's gonna be a banger. Finally, I watched this great documentary called The Deepest Breath. It's super, super sad. I feel like, by the way, that's a good sign of like a documentary that's kind of worth watching is like, oh dude, it's so good. It'll make you weep uncontrollably in the fetal position. But I kind of think that was what makes it worth watching. It's about people who free dive. They will dive into the ocean without a tank and see how low they can get and then come back up for air. And it's really sad and it's really incredible. So that's all I'll say about it, but I do think you should watch it. But guys, there's so many good things that I did not even watch. I also watched a lot of great content this year. Shout out to, they're called We Love You. I keep seeing their TikToks and I really, really like their style. They do this very sweet, like genuine, heartfelt style of content where it's these big existential questions with like gorgeous images of nature. And every time I watch one of their videos, it makes me feel better. And I don't really know how they get away with being so genuine and so popular online, but whatever that sauce is, I want to drink it. I also love Life of Riza. Life of Riza makes like these cinematic vlog style videos. And I think it kind of changed how I felt about YouTube. I watched her channel and I was like, oh, whoa, you can make something that is sort of seemingly unscripted, but it's absolutely to a T narratively edited and storyboarded. And I was like, that's a cool blend of style I hadn't seen before. But guys, that's been my sloppies. There was so much good stuff that I did not even watch. I haven't even watched that Florence Pugh, Andrew Garfield, insanely, daringly sad movie yet. I've got to go back to the theater and I've got to kind of cross off my bucket list. But I figured for one of the final slops of the year, I would give my hot recommends of things I think you should watch that I watched / gamed. And also comment below all the things that you feel that I should watch or everyone in the comments should watch. That way we can have kind of like a perfect list of all the juicy stuff. Guys, this has been your slop. Hope you enjoy.